Your immune system can completely rewire itself in just 2 weeks. That's not a health guru making wild claims. That's what National Institutes of Health researchers discovered when they put people on vegan diets and watched their bodies transform at the cellular level. Today, we're diving deep into whether a vegan diet actually improves immunity, what specific changes happen in your body when you go plant-based, and why the type of immunity you boost might surprise you. By the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly how food becomes medicine and whether ditching animal products could be your immune system's best friend. Let me bring in someone who's been following this research closely to break down what's actually happening inside our bodies when we make this switch.
So here's what's fascinating about this NIH study. They didn't just look at people who were already vegan. They took 20 people and had them eat both a vegan diet and a ketogenic diet for 2 weeks each, in random order. And what they found was mind-blowing.
Wait, they had the same people try both diets? That's actually brilliant for controlling variables.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. The vegan diet specifically boosted what's called innate immunity. That's your body's first line of defense, the non-specific response that kicks in immediately when pathogens show up.
Okay, but help me understand this. What's the difference between innate and adaptive immunity? Because I feel like most people think immunity is just, immunity.
Think of it this way. Innate immunity is like having really good security guards at the front door. They don't need to recognize specific threats. They just know something doesn't belong and they attack it immediately. Adaptive immunity, on the other hand, is like having a database of every criminal who's ever tried to break in. It's slower to respond, but incredibly specific, and it remembers threats for next time.
So the vegan diet was basically upgrading the security guards, not the database?
Exactly. And what's wild is that the ketogenic diet did the opposite. It enhanced adaptive immunity. Same people, different diets, completely different immune responses.
That's actually incredible. So it's not just that different diets affect immunity, they're affecting completely different parts of the immune system.
Right. And this study was conducted at the NIH's Metabolic Clinical Research Unit. So these participants were literally living on site for the entire month-long study. The researchers could control everything.
Living on site? Wow, that's some serious scientific rigor. What exactly were they measuring?
They used what they call a multi-omics approach, analyzing blood, urine, and stool samples to assess biochemical, cellular, metabolic, and immune responses, plus changes to the microbiome.
Multi-omics sounds very fancy and scientific, but what did they actually find in practical terms?
Well, the vegan diet was about 10% fat and 75% carbohydrates, while the keto diet was 76% fat and 10% carbohydrates. And interestingly, people on the vegan diet naturally chose to eat fewer calories.
They chose to eat fewer calories? That wasn't controlled?
Nope. Participants could eat as much as they wanted of either diet. But the vegan group consistently ate less, which might be part of why we see these immune benefits.
Interesting. So it's not just about what you're eating, but potentially how much you're eating too.
Exactly. And this connects to something really fascinating. There's research showing that plant-based foods contain functional constituents that specifically boost immunity against both acute and chronic disorders.
Functional constituents? You mean like specific compounds in plants that act like medicine?
Yes. Things like polyphenols, carotenoids, and dietary fiber. These bioactive compounds have been linked to key biological pathways that reduce inflammation and support immune function.
So it's not just that you're avoiding animal products, you're actively consuming compounds that boost your immune system.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The gut microbiome changes too. The communities of bacteria living in your gut shift when you go vegan, and that has huge implications for immunity.
Okay, now we're getting into the microbiome. I feel like this is where things get really complex, right?
It is complex, but here's the key point. Your gut microbiota plays fundamental roles in immune regulation. It's both regulated by and regulating your local and systemic immune reactions.
So the bacteria in your gut are basically talking to your immune system?
Yes. And disruptions in microbial balance, what scientists call dysbiosis, have been associated with decreased immune function and increased disease risk.
That's actually kind of mind-blowing. So when you change your diet, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding an entire ecosystem that affects your immunity.
Exactly. And there's some really interesting research showing that vegetarians have lower levels of certain antibodies compared to meat eaters, which suggests that dietary exposure can alter systemic immunity.
Lower levels of antibodies? Is that good or bad?
In this case, it's actually good. These are antibodies against compounds found in meat that can cause inflammatory responses. So having fewer of them means less inflammation.
So by not eating meat, you're not just avoiding potential inflammatory compounds, you're actually reducing your body's inflammatory response to them.
Right. And there's been systematic review and meta-analysis research showing that vegetarian-based dietary patterns are associated with significantly lower concentrations of inflammatory biomarkers.
Significantly lower? That sounds impressive. What kind of biomarkers are we talking about?
Things like C-reactive protein, fibrinogen, and total leukocyte count. These are all markers that doctors use to assess inflammation and immune function.
Those sound like the kind of things that show up on blood tests that doctors get excited about when they improve.
Exactly. But here's what's really important to understand. The research is still evolving. The NIH researchers specifically noted that more research is needed to determine if these changes are beneficial or detrimental.
Wait, they don't know if the changes are good or bad? That seems like a pretty important detail.
It is important. The immune system is incredibly complex, and just because something changes doesn't automatically mean it's better. They need longer-term studies to understand the real health effects.
So we know vegan diets change your immune system rapidly, but we don't fully know what that means for your health long-term.
Exactly. And this is particularly important when we think about therapeutic nutritional interventions, using diet to treat diseases like cancer or inflammatory conditions.
Therapeutic nutritional interventions, so basically using food as medicine?
Yes, but the researchers noted that these interventions are not well understood, and few studies have directly compared the effects of more than one diet, like this NIH study did.
So this NIH study is actually pretty groundbreaking in that it compared diets head-to-head in the same people.
Absolutely. Most nutrition research looks at people who already follow certain diets, which makes it hard to separate the effects of diet from other lifestyle factors.
Right, because people who choose to be vegan might also exercise more, or meditate, or do other healthy things.
Exactly. But by having the same people try both diets, they controlled for all those other variables. The only thing that changed was the food.
That's actually brilliant study design. But I'm curious, what about the practical implications? If someone's listening to this and thinking about going vegan for immune benefits, what should they know?
Well, the research shows that healthful plant-based diets are associated with reduced inflammation and favorable metabolic profiles. But the key word there is healthful.
Healthful, meaning not all vegan diets are created equal?
Exactly. The research distinguishes between healthful and unhealthful plant-based patterns. You can be vegan and live on processed foods and sugar, which wouldn't give you these benefits.
So it's not just about avoiding animal products, it's about actively choosing nutrient-dense plant foods.
Right. And the research shows considerable gaps remain regarding long-term impact and optimal dietary patterns, particularly across diverse populations.
Diverse populations, meaning this research might not apply equally to everyone?
That's a really important point. The NIH study had diverse participants in terms of ethnicity, race, gender, BMI, and age, but it was still only 20 people for 2 weeks each.
20 people for 2 weeks. That's a pretty small sample size for such big claims about immunity.
It is small, but it's also incredibly detailed. The multi-omics approach gave them an unprecedented look at what's happening at the cellular level.
So it's like having a really high-resolution picture of a small area versus a blurry picture of a large area.
That's a great analogy. And what they found is that dietary changes can rapidly alter immune cell frequencies and immune-related gene expression.
Gene expression. So we're talking about diet literally changing which genes are turned on or off?
Yes. That's how powerful these dietary interventions can be. They're not just affecting what nutrients you get, they're affecting how your genes respond.
That's actually incredible. So when you step back from all this research, what's the big picture here?
The big picture is that diet profoundly impacts both your microbiome and your immune system. And these effects happen much faster than we previously thought.
And specifically with vegan diets, we're seeing this boost to innate immunity, that first line of defense against pathogens.
Right. But we need to be honest about what we don't know. We don't yet understand whether these rapid changes translate to better long-term health outcomes.
So the science is promising, but still evolving. For someone considering this, it's not a magic bullet, but it's definitely worth paying attention to.
Exactly. And the research suggests that if you do go plant-based, focus on whole foods rich in those bioactive compounds we talked about. Polyphenols, carotenoids, fiber.
So here's what this really comes down to. Your immune system is incredibly responsive to what you eat, and vegan diets seem to flip specific immune switches in ways we're just beginning to understand.
And the speed of these changes is remarkable. 2 weeks to see measurable differences in immune function and gene expression. That's the power of food as medicine.
The next time someone tells you that changing your diet won't make a difference, you can tell them that NIH researchers watched people's immune systems rewire themselves in real time. In just 2 weeks, your body can literally learn new ways to defend itself.